About a year or so ago, many or most of the professional smart people in the mainstream media news had felt certain that Donald Trump and his sycophants would not attempt a coup, but those of us who warned that Trump would do anything to stay in power were described as hysterical or alarmist and suffering from Trump derangement syndrome. We were told that that repugs, for all their bad behavior, were patriots who loved America, which they're not. They're the exact opposite. They're not patriots and they don't love America. And that Trump himself was too ignorant, too disorganized, and too incompetent to, to succeed in overturning an election. After January 6th, those who denied that such a thing um, was imaginable were made to look like adults who believe in Santa Claus. More important, Trump's coup was not defeated. Its ringleaders and organizers are not in jail, but they are walking free and overtly planning for a more successful what they call attempt next time. Um, Donald Trump and the other ringleaders and organizers are still not in prison like they should be. They are fucking walking around free, which they shouldn't be, and they have not been punished, which they should have been. But Trump and his fascist movement are continuing their nationwide effort to undermine what they call the multiracial democracy through spreading the big lie and using lawsuits, legislation, and other means, including threats of terrorism and political violence, to restrict the right to vote, particularly for black and brown people and other key members of the Democratic base. How many of the gatekeepers of approved public discourse in America have responded to the events of January 6th and the continuing attacks on American democracy, for the most part, by throwing their huge mistake down the memory hole. The boldest among them now present themselves as full-throated defenders of American democracy, claiming that they actually warned the country and the world about Trump's imminent coup attempt. They simply hope that the public is not paying attention. To watch this public rewrite of American history in real time is something like seeing a TV series recast a prominent character with a new actor in the middle of a season, while pretending that nothing has changed. Given the limited attention span of the American people at large, this ploy may work. The constant torrent of revelations about the Trump's cabal coup attempt has made it increasingly difficult for the media and political classes to maintain the charade or charade. Last week we learned about the right wing legal scholar John Eastman, who created a how to guide designed to encourage the vice squatter Mike Pence to overturn the electoral votes and award Trump a bogus victory. In an essay at New York Magazine, Jonathan Chait describes Eastman's guide to overthrowing America's constitutional order. Eastman's argument at least broadly tracks the plan embraced by Trump and the mob of the right-wing sycophants who stormed the Capitol on January 6th. It posits that the Electoral Count Act grants the vice squatter discretion over which electoral ballots to accept as part of the official count. No, it does not. The legal merits of the argument don't matter very much. Eastman's interpretation is widely derided as crazy. But the key point is that even if he's right, which he's not, he would have identified a wormhole in the Constitution, permitting the vice squatter to override the election results. But since the vice squatter's interests are typically aligned with the squatter, this power would allow the squatter's party to stay in office through an indefinite series of elections. The last few weeks have seen other damning revelations about Trump and his regime's coup plot. As reported in Bob Woodward and Robert Costa's new book Peril, which I brought the other day but haven't read it yet. But Trump has appeared to be so unhinged after the November election that General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and other senior national security leaders were worried that he might start a war with China or Iran. As people wrote in an earlier essay for Salon, these revelations should not be surprising, but in so many ways these revelations about Trump and his regime's misdeeds are like the picture on the front of a jigsaw puzzle box. We know that what the final message will look like, but still need to put together the pieces, so the end result is something of an anticlimax. Last week, the House Select Committee on January 6th uprising issued its first subpoenas to members of the Trump regime and other apparent participants, including the former White House staffers and Trump lackeys such as Steve Bannon, Mark Meadows, Kash Patel, and Dan Scavino. It's possible that we will learn more about the events of January 6th if those people are compelled to testify, but honestly, that is not likely. Those people are deeply loyal to licking Trump's balls, and they have already demonstrated their contempt for American democracy and the rule of the law. Former Republican strategist Rick Wilson had offered admirably clear advice to the committee through Twitter. Each one of these Trump mooks will resist the subpoenas. Each one of them will demand to testify in private. Each one will make spurious claims of executive privilege, but each one of them will lie and lie. Now, and this is the tricky part, but do try to pay attention. Fuck these guys. Fuck these guys. Don't let them or their lawyers wedge you in the phony courtesies and hollow formalities of old Washington. These are people who would have gladly burned down our nation. January 6th for them wasn't a failed coup, it was a training exercise. In hindsight, Donald Trump's repeated threats that he would not respect the outcome of an election if he lost were clear statements of intent. Some of the efforts to deny or otherwise minimize Donald Trump and his cabal's imminent coup attempt are stunning in their level of failure and denial. Here. In an essay for CNN, Stephen Collison attempts to navigate the morose of wrongness and self-delusion in the mainstream media, beginning with the observation that a growing paper trail appears to prove that Trump's intent to stay in power illegally. The record is beginning to add up to an extraordinary indictment of the ex-squatters' abuses of power and one of the darkest moments in U.S. history. In the fraught days after the election last year and after the Capitol insurrection, many observers were unwilling to initially use the word coup, and they were very aware of the explosive nature of such language. The surreal experience of watching an assault on a constitutional guardrail, once thought inviolable, was also at times hard to process. And skeptics of the coup terminology also suggested that Trump's efforts were little more than a madcap and an incompetent political theater. Yet the conspiratorial and at times clownish attempts to overturn the election, especially by Trump's legal team, don't make an unprecedented effort to destroy America's democratic traditions any less mendacious. I don't know. Yeah. Okay, in this era of grave and imminent danger, the mainstream media remains beholden to an old order that is now obsolete. One in which Democrats and Republicans behaved in accordance with a shared belief in democracy and other foundational rules about the respect for institutions, the Constitution, and the rule of the law, among any other political norms. This fucking committee, or this fucking commitment to an obsolescent political order, with its conventions of horse race journalism, both sidesism, and other false equivalencies, have only served to normalize and empower a criminal, destructive, racist, and deeply sociopathic political movement. Dan Frumkin, who's a media watchdog and founder of the Press Watch and a frequent contributor of Salon, offers these additional insights. No one can possibly argue that modern political journalism has fulfilled its essential mission of creating an uninformed electorate, so it's long past time for a reset. But let's start with an overarching problem. Misinformation, disinformation, and gaslighting have become rampant in the Republican political discourse, turning citizens against each other, choking the legislative process, eroding confidence in elections, and in the age of COVID, literally getting people killed. A striking number of voters are laboring under a series of delusions that make them incapable of rational decision-making. The country is still reeling from a violent attempted coup in the name of a big lie. A lie that has essentially become a doctrine for one of our two major political parties. Despite all this, our elite political media recognizes no need for what they call a course change. But if the mainstream news media is to redeem itself and take up the mission of serving the public interest during this democracy crisis, there must be a public reckoning with its failures. One possible beginning might include public letters and other statements from the editors and producers of major media institutions, in which they explain their coverage of Trump's coup attempt and his regime more generally. Those who minimized or rejected or mocked their imminent possibility of a coup should also be invited to explain their reasoning. Nationwide panel discussions or public forums on how and why the media performs so poorly should also be contemplated. Civil society organizations could play a critical role in creating and enabling this necessary moment of national reckoning. But will any of this fucking happen? Quite likely fucking not. But if the media is unwilling to engage in a critical self-reflection about its fucking failures in the age of Trump, we can almost guarantee that the next coup attempt will be better organized and much more fucking effective. But when will press freedom and the First Amendment be after that? So if you like the video, give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King, and also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. And thanks for listening.